Hello everybody, welcome back. Since I did an all the mods video for my Red Cat, I figured I'd do one for the TRX Sport as well. And I'll just start off with the body. I added an interior that you can't really see because the windows are all scratched up, but it's a two-person interior. That's for scale points and competitions. I cut the back half of the cage off. Y'all are familiar with what that looks like stock. But I just basically cut it and then hollowed out the mesh that was here and got rid of this whole piece here, and it dumped a bunch of weight off the tail. Also, I repositioned all of the trail equipment. It's still there. I just wanted to move it lower and farther forward. I also added this snatch block. It's functional metal, and I think it's super cool. I really like that. This is a functional tow rope that kind of looks like bars on the back when it's strapped on tight, but I've got it loosened right now just because I'm going to pull the top off in a minute. It has a $8 eBay light kit on it. I'll show you one cool thing about the light kit that I have on it though. On the bottom side of this body, these are my light kit connectors that connect to the chassis, and when it's positive, one is negative, and they attach right here and here. When they touch, this turns the lights on the vehicle. I don't have to unplug any cables. I don't have to do anything. If I move this magnet from this position and slide over to this position, then the light bar comes on as well. It's just a crude switch that doesn't matter if it gets wet or dirty. It just works. So there it goes. Anyway, I'll show you how it works when you put it on. All you got to do to activate the light system is get the body on the pegs, and on the rear the whole thing lights up. You don't have to connect or disconnect anything because it literally connects itself. And the light kit on this for the headlights and taillights is not the stock one that comes with the TRX 4. It's just a cheap $8 eBay light kit. And because of that, I had this blue light here and a blue light here, and I get a blue undercoat look out of it. So I'll move this here. This time when I put the body on, it will not light up the light bar. This light bar takes a tremendous amount of battery capacity, so I generally don't run it just because it noticeably shortens the battery life. I'll move on to the chassis mods at this point, and first thing you might notice is I've taken off the inner fender liners and things like that you don't see here that all the scale trucks have, and I got rid of that just because it's weight that is above the axle, and I build my stuff for competitions. Whether I compete with it or not, it can, and these things perform really well. But I got rid of the weight that it didn't needed. Also, when I first got this truck, it had the red suspension links that you see there that are the high clearance ones. It's similar to the high trail. There's slightly different length, not dramatically, but I think they're a little bit different. But anyway, this had 2.2 wheels on it, and it now has class 1 tires. I'll talk about that more later. But these were clearanced for 2.2 tires, so I may someday replace these, I don't know, the running boards. But anyway, those are cut and clearanced. All these edges on the sliders here, since this is I compete with this, I rounded every corner off. Anywhere there's a sharp edge or a point, it's going to hang up on a rock. So I just kind of rounded out these front edges and the back edge, and it's a minor thing, but it does prevent hang-ups. I smoothed and tucked the bumpers a bit. Basically, I didn't want any edges on the bumpers either, so you'll notice they're a little bit more round looking than a stock one might be, but it's still a stock bumper. I've added a winch, functional winch for competitions, to the stock bumper. I had to do a little drilling, not a big deal. Same for the back. The other thing I did was I tightened up these screws a little bit so that these D-shackles, or whatever you call them, bow shackles, they stay in position because I don't want them dragging on rocks when I'm competing. So I put them up out of the way, they don't get caught on anything. Another thing I have is this motor that you've noticed. It's kind of a 10 scale 427. I wish I'd have got the LS1, but I didn't realize it until after I pulled the trigger on eBay, and here it is. So there it is. If you look really closely, the firing order is even correct, because why not? These are worth 5 scale points at the competitions I go to. So I figured, why not do it? It's also a heat sink, and it has a fan built in. There's cooling slots here that evacuate the air from the backside of the motor. So in theory, it will help it to stay a little bit cooler. It does add a little bit of weight up high, which I'm not thrilled about, but it's far forward, so it kind of mitigates that. I don't think it hurts the climb at all. It may lower the side hilling just a tiny bit. Let's see where I am. I wrote all this stuff down so I can move on very quickly with it. It has the Spektrum 2-in-1 Firma 2300 kV motor, which is awesome. If you're looking for a great motor, that's the one to get. It is a fantastic motor, and it has speed, it has power, it has low end torque. It has so much low end torque that you'll break your truck if you're not careful, because if it binds, you won't even feel it. It'll just keep ramping up the torque to maintain whatever RPM you selected by your depth of your trigger pull on your controller. But it'll just keep torquing, and you better hope the slipper clutch works, or it's going to break something. It's an awesome motor. Anyway, I have this hand-built low CG battery mount, and what's nice about it is aluminum, and it puts the the battery just barely above the drive shaft. Or I'm sorry, yeah, the rear drive shaft. And I don't know if you can look in there, but it barely clears it. It's basically a millimeter away from touching this, and that's what I wanted, because it also sits the bottom with these frame rails. It's just barely, the frame rails barely touch it when they go to full compression. So nothing is in the way of that as far as how much it can articulate, but yet it drops the battery down below the level, this high level portion of the chassis that goes the top and then down over and then back up to the front. It actually drops the battery below the level of the chassis back here. So I can use a small 4200 battery, or really any size I want, because I use these Apex battery straps, and I'll show you why those are great. Apex RC makes these battery straps that are rubberized on the back side, and when you put them on a battery, they do not move. That's stuck in place. They don't slide at all. So that way I can run a short pack here, throw the strap on it, and it won't slide back as I'm driving. The stock one, it wouldn't hold it at all, and it would hold it in place, but it would slide back and forth if I use a shorter battery than stock. I've got 2S and 3S batteries, and with the Apex straps, which I really like, Apex RC products, it holds it in place regardless of what size battery you use. I could use a micro and it would hold it in place, and it would never move. They're fantastic. Moving on from there, I have the contact lighting that I showed you before with the body. This is where I've got basically wires coming off the receiver, and they hook to this copper braid and this copper braid. These are from a slot car, so I used to do that back in the 90s and was very successful with it, but I still have it, so save all the pieces. That's one of my mottos. I also have the Bunji style shock limiters, you can see, and I added these because it's similar to the pen spring mod, but I can adjust the amount of tension these have, and I really like that. Also, it does not limit the amount of travel I have. I've heard that the pen spring mod does limit the amount of articulation you get slightly, so I still have full range with this, plus it's adjustable because I can put the screw at any point along the strap and adjust the tension, because I'll either stretch it out or take the tension off of it. I have a waterproof 40 kilogram steering servo that leads to a drop servo arm that literally drops down and then the servo arm comes out at a lower position than the stock one. And I did that because I have gone and flipped my steering bars around. The tie bar that goes across from wheel to wheel is on top, and normally it goes in this channel down here. I bolted it on the top to get it up out of the way so rocks don't hit it, and then I needed that drop servo to add the drag length. Now they did kind of want to get into each other, but I clearanced them a little bit. And in another video, an earlier video, I showed you how I did that, but my steering links are very far up out of the way now. That leads to the next thing you see right here, and this is the metal skid plate that I just built. And this acts kind of like the front of an airboat, where if you hit a rock, it just rides up and over, and it doesn't let the obstacle go head first into a flat front edge of this diff cover, because that would stop it. Now if I hit something, it just lifts up and rides over the top. So that is fantastic. I love that. And it's great because it's good for the motor too, because if the truck doesn't stop because it's physically contacted a obstacle and it's riding over it, the chassis never loads up and you don't break stuff. So I had to kind of channel those a little bit, but that's on a different video. The other thing you see here is I have brass C-hubs, brass portal boxes, brass steering link mounts, and a brass diff cover. And I mean, that's just basic stuff that you can do that really makes a huge difference. Also, I have the G8 compound Hyrax 4.19 class 1 tires on this, and the class 1 tires give you a way better climb because it drops the center of gravity to a lower height. These are also internally weighted. I've got, I think, about 120 kilograms of iron that goes around the rim on the inside that you can't see, but it makes a big difference. I can't remember whether I put the Crawler Innovation 2-stage foams in the back or the front, but all my crawlers that I run with really stiff foams. In this case, I have a slightly softer foam in the back because it's lighter in the back and it doesn't need that stiffness. In the front, it does need the stiffness, and without it, suppose you're doing a side hill turn, the sidewall will, like, we're turning like this, it's on its side. A lot of times the sidewall will collapse in and either flip the truck over completely, or it just won't steer because it's like trying to turn a corner with a flat tire. And I think people run entirely too soft of foams on their trucks. But, you know, to each your own. Do whatever you want. I've entered this in 2 competitions in Sea Rapids this year and won both of them. I've also entered my Red Cat Gen 7 in the same 2 comps for Class 2. I won both of those. So I'm doing something right. At least I think I am. It's doing what I want it to do. And oh yeah, I forgot to mention I also have the Racing steel center axle housing here, but I run stock drive shafts on this. I haven't seen a reason to change them because they don't get in the way of anything and they haven't broken. Traxxas makes some really tough stuff. It's built like a basher, but it crawls really well. So, you know, say what you want about Traxxas, but I like this truck a lot. Let me read my list here and see if there's anything I've forgotten. Alright, I made notes for this video because I didn't want to forget anything or waste your time. So I wanted to be able to show it all as quickly as I could. And don't think I've forgotten anything. But this thing is a great crawler. It is better than it should be. I took it out with some buddies that were running G speeds, and it could climb a few things that they couldn't climb. Partially due to the fact that I've got a limiter. I forgot about that. I forgot to write that down. There's a limiter in here that's basically a shoestring and a bungee cord, and I'll try to zoom in on that, and it's right in front of the motor there, and that limits how much the chassis can unload if it's real steep. Also, I have bungee limiters back here on the back side of the shocks. They're a little less noticeable than the front, but limiters, This one on the front does slightly limit how much droop it will have, but what it does is it allows it to fully articulate left and right, and it, you know, it has enough, I guess, length on it to not hinder full articulation. But this piece here, this is normally, unless you're climbing, it's not even part of the equation. It's loose because, you know, there you can see it moving, the end of my finger. That just goes along for the ride until it's needed, and then it limits the suspension extension on steep climbs. And this is another 60-degree capable climbing rig, and it's great. This is a fantastic truck. I really like it, and it's not quite as good as the Red Cat for two reasons. It has longer overhangs. I mean, this rear overhang is huge. The Red Cat's ends basically at the back edge of the tire. So this has about, I'd say, 3 to 3.5 inches of overhang on the rear, quite a bit on the front, where the Red Cat has maybe a 1/2 inch on the front and maybe 3/4 of an inch on the back. So the overhangs are huge. Also, it has class 1 tires, so it's just not going to have the diff clearance. I do currently have 5mm spacers on each side, which brings it out to a total of an extra centimeter wide. Well, I'm going to narrow it back down. I don't like that because what I'm noticing is, yeah, it'll give it a little more side hilling ability, but it exposes too much of this. And if I can tuck that wheel over it, I'm not going to hit this anymore. Well, I'll get rid of a 1/2 centimeter of width to cover a 1/2 centimeter of this, you know. And so what if it doesn't side hill quite as good? It'll be really close. I'm not worried about it. So that's all I got for today. Hope you liked it. This is a fantastic truck. If you guys are ever in central Iowa, look me up. We'll go out to Red Rock and have a time, and we'll see you later. Everybody go outside and have a great week.